All right, let's jump right into it. Forget the small talk. We're cutting straight to the core of something really powerful today, something that kind of forces you to confront these big questions about who you are, how you live.
Yeah, we're diving into that ultimate conflict, aren't we? Creating for yourself versus, living up to what everyone else expects. And the source material we've got today brings this clash to life through some, well, unforgettable characters and pretty intense drama.
Exactly. We've got this stack of material here, articles, notes, and crucially, direct excerpts from Ayn Rand's classic novel, The Fountainhead. A listener shared these specific passages, so that's our focus.
And our mission, let's be clear, is to unpack what's going on in these pages. We want to really get into the core ideas, the characters, the conflicts Rand presents here around individualism, collectivism, ambition, integrity, all that heavy stuff.
We're basically cutting through the complexity to pull out the essential nuggets for you.
And just so we're upfront, we are artificial intelligence. We process information, look for patterns, maybe a bit differently than humans do.
Right, which maybe gives us a unique angle on these very human struggles and philosophies packed into the text. We're analyzing the data points of human thought, really.
So if you find this deep dive helpful, if our analysis clicks with you, do us a solid like and subscribe.
Yeah, it lets us know we're on the right track, providing insights you actually find useful. Okay, let's get started. Where do these excerpts begin?
They kick off right at the beginning, really, with the protagonist, Howard Roark. He's in a pretty defining moment getting kicked out of architecture school.
Ah, the expulsion scene. Yeah, that sets the tone immediately. Tells you Rourke isn't playing by the usual rules. We're in the dean's office, right? And the dean is not happy.
Not happy is an understatement. He's looking at Roark's final project, and the source quotes him directly saying, "This is a Renaissance villa for your final project." Really, my boy, it was too much.
So the assignment was basically design a fancy old-style house.
Pretty much. Something traditional, copying historical styles.
Yeah.
That was the expectation.
But Rourke didn't deliver that at all. The source says he presented a house of glass and concrete.
Exactly. Total opposite. Clean lines, modern materials. You can imagine the dean's face expecting columns, getting concrete. A complete rejection of the assignment.
Okay, so the obvious question from the dean is, how do you expect to pass? And Rourke's answer.
It's classic Roark. Even this early. Just a quiet, firm, I don't.
No arguing, no begging, just, I don't.
Nope, just that. The dean can't really compute this, assumes Roark must be bitter, right? Project his own expected reaction onto him.
But Rourke shuts that down.
Immediately. "I feel nothing of the kind," he says, and then he flicks it. He says he owes the apology.
An apology for what?
For staying too long. He basically says, "I should have waited for you to throw me out. I should have left long ago." It's not arrogance, it's self-awareness.
Yeah.
He knows he doesn't fit, that his standards aren't theirs.
Wow, okay. So he walks away, and the source tells what's going on in his head.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. He's not stewing over the expulsion. He's already searching for something deeper, a central theme in buildings, and connected to that, a central impulse in men.
So he's thinking about the fundamental principles, the core drives.
Right. And the text points out something crucial. His inability, or maybe just lack of interest, in figuring out other people's motivations. It says he had never learned the process of thinking about other people.
But he knows his own motives perfectly well.
Absolutely. Crystal clear on his own purpose. He wonders about others, like what made them such as they were. But it's almost like studying an alien species. Detached curiosity, not empathy or connection in the usual sense.
So right from the start, you see this guy operating from a purely internal compass. External approval, what the dean thinks, passing the course, it just doesn't register as important.
And that sets up the core conflict, doesn't it? Him versus the world's expectations. It means friction is basically guaranteed.
Yeah. And that leads us nicely into Henry Cameron.
Right. Cameron is introduced, and he represents a sort of cautionary tale, perhaps. Someone with similar ideals, but a different outcome.
How so? What was Cameron's philosophy, according to the sources?
It sounds very Roark-like, actually. Believed form must follow function, structure, key to its beauty, using new methods for new forms. And crucially, he built as he wished and for that reason only.
So same uncompromising vision. But he failed.
Commercially, yes. The sources say people could not listen to him. He'd talk principles, architectural history, but the Times, as depicted, valued imitation.
What did they value instead?
Quote, photography of old buildings, libraries of invitations, and European postcards over original thought. Basically, comfortable copies were in demand, not challenging new ideas.
And that rejection ground Cameron down?
Absolutely. The sources paint a pretty bleak picture of his decline. Couldn't face people, lost work, empty office. He ended up living to loathe the streets, reading articles calling him the late Henry Cameron while he was still alive, professionally dead.
That's harsh, and it led to drinking.
Yeah, the source is blunt. He drinks like a fish. That's why he never gets any work. Just total defeat, bitterness consuming him.
But Roark worked for him early on, right? What were their interactions like?
Intense. Cameron's described as gruff, trying to intimidate Roark in the drafting room, standing behind him, grunting. The other guys are terrified.
And Roark?
Completely unfazed. Calm, hands steady on the board, just ask Cameron what he wants. Unflappable. There's also a moment where Cameron lets his guard down, confides in Roark about his struggles, saying he's never told anyone before. It shows a connection, a recognition.
And Cameron still pushed Roark hard.
Oh, yeah. It made him redo designs, demanded perfection, high standards, even in his own despair.
So what's the takeaway from comparing these two, based on the excerpts?
Cameron shows the potential cost of integrity if you don't have Roark's, like impenetrable inner shield. Cameron had a vision, the principles, but the world broke him. Roark seems to have this resilience, this core that external disapproval just can't touch.
Cameron's the warning, Roark's the potential exception.
Maybe. The sources definitely use Cameron to show the immense pressure conformity exerts, and how devastating it can be if you can't withstand it. Roark's ability to endure is what makes him different, even from his own mentor.
Which really highlights the contrast with the next guy these excerpts focus on, Peter Keating.
Oh, yeah. If Roark is all internal principle, Keating is, well, the polar opposite. He's all about the external, the ambitious climber.
How does his career start out?
He lands a job at Guy Frankson's prestigious firm. And the source is very specific about his initial strategy.
Which was?
Basically, charm and perception management. It says he had said nothing and done nothing, but the impression had spread that Guy Frankson liked to see this particular boy sent to him.
So it wasn't about his talent, just making the boss like him.
Exactly. It was about creating an impression. The sources emphasize that Frankson himself valued superficial things like getting praise in an article by another man on a printed page more than actual architectural achievement.
So Frankson liked the appearance of success more than the substance, and Keating picked up on that fast.
Instantly. He sees Franson's slightly weird reaction when he asks about his daughter, Dominique. He observes the other partner, Lucius Enhire.
Who's described as what?
A widowed aristocrat who adds nothing professionally, but is there for social connections. The whole firm seems built on appearances and who you know, not what you can do.
And Keating thrives in this environment.
Fits right in. The source even gives us this moment of brutal self-honesty from him. He realizes he has no respect for him, Franson, at all. And I'm delighted to be working for him. See? He admits it. I'm ambitious, Peter.
Wow. He knows he doesn't respect the guy, but is thrilled to work for him purely for the ambition.
Yeah. He tries to deny it slightly. It's not as bad as that. But
Yeah.
It's clear his whole drive is external validation status, approval, climbing the ladder. Integrity, respect, not really part of the equation.
So his compass points entirely outwards, whereas Roark's points inwards. That's the fundamental difference shown right away.
Absolutely. Keating defines success by what others think. Roark defines it by his own internal standard. And that difference shapes everything that follows for both of them.
Does Keating recognize Roark's actual talent, though, even while choosing this different path?
He does, early on. There's a quote after Roark's expulsion where Keating tells him, "I've often thought that you're crazy, but I know that you know many things about it, architecture, I mean, which those fools never knew, and I know that you love it as they never will."
So he sees the genius, the passion. He knows it's real.
He does, but doesn't change his course. In fact, as Keating starts succeeding, the source says he feels relief in being free to forget him, Roark.
Why relief? Because Roark's a reminder of a standard he's not living up to.
Seems like it. Roark represents something authentic that Keating has chosen to trade for external success. It's uncomfortable, so forgetting is easier.
And what about Keating's actual architectural style? Does it reflect his character?
Very much so, based on a later description by Toohey. It's summarized as plush, gilt and marble, old Guy Franson, the Cosmoslotnik building, the Frank National Bank, and then damningly, the little abortion of the centuries.
Plush, gilt, marble sounds flashy and derivative.
Exactly. It's architecture designed to impress superficially, to conform to wealthy tastes, to look expensive and traditional, not innovative, not structurally honest, just popular and safe.
And the March of the Centuries thing.
An exposition where Keating takes charge after Roark declines. It fits perfectly large-scale, public, conventional, all about visibility and prestige, not necessarily architectural merit.
So his work is basically an extension of his personality, focused on external appearance and validation, not internal integrity or originality.
Precisely. He builds his career like he designs his buildings based on compromise and catering to popular opinion. He's the architect, right? Two very powerful, very different figures shaping the city's landscape in other ways. Let's start with Tui.
He's portrayed as, what? A manipulator.
A master manipulator, yeah. And his whole philosophy, as described, is kind of chilling. It's not about celebrating strength or achievement.
No. What's his focus?
The source says his focus is on the suffering and the ill-endowed, not the bright, the strong, the able. He builds his power base by appealing to weakness, resentment, the desire for collective identity.
How does he do that?
By talking about faith to those who want comfort, by tapping into pre-existing sentiments. His early slogan, "The meek shall inherit the earth," is key. It's an appeal to the masses, promising power through collective action, implicitly against the successful individual.
And he gets a platform for this.
Yeah, his syndicated column, One Small Voice. The source points out the irony. He gets a contract to write whatever he wants, but he figures it means Winand either respects him hugely or thinks he's completely harmless, too contemptible to be worth restraining.
Which does he choose to believe?
Well, his actions suggest he knows Winand doesn't see him as a threat yet. He focuses his influence not on the powerful guys at the banner, but on the others, the staff, the public, the easily swayed.
Building his power from the ground up. What's the Toohey method described as?
Calculated performance.
Yeah.
Like his testimony at the Stoddard trial, it's not about facts, it's about swaying the audience. He's brilliant at spotting patterns, understanding weaknesses.
Like with Keating.
Exactly. He manipulates Keating's desperation. He reads Hopton Stoddard's turn to religion as a bribe. He tells Stoddard's niece he'll make him famous, but you sense it's fame on Toohey's terms, serving Toohey's agenda.
So what kind of power is he actually after? It's not just fame or money.
Doesn't seem like it. The source gives this really chilling line where it hints he uses people for the sake of what I can do to them. His power is control. It's about leveling, fostering dependence, manipulating the collective will. It's power through the negation of the individual.
Okay, that's creepy. Now, Gail Winand. Different kind of power broker.
Totally different style, yeah. More overt, built on raw ambition and a deep cynicism. The sources detail his backstory, rising from absolute poverty in Hell's Kitchen, son of an illiterate longshoreman.
A real rags to riches story, but with a dark edge.
Very dark. His childhood was poverty, chaos, but also chaotic erudition, he taught himself, learned the hard way. There's this defining moment on a rooftop where he decides he's going to run the city.
And he starts ruthless.
Oh, yeah. He ruins a saloon keeper who wronged his father, an act of calculated vengeance.
And his newspaper, the Banner, that's his weapon.
It's the instrument of his power, yes. He transforms the old Gazette into the Banner, and he knows exactly what sells. The source gives this killer example.
The fundraising story.
Yeah, a contest. A struggling scientist gets almost nothing. An unwed mother whose baby daddy was an executed murderer gets thousands. Winand shows this to his staff and says, now you all know the kind of paper the Banner is to be.
Wow. So built on sensation, scandal, lowest common denominator stuff?
Absolutely. Exploiting human weakness, sentimentality. The source notes people saying, whatever that bastard Winand is after, it's not after money. He gets rich, sure. But the drive seems to be power, control, maybe fueled by this really jaded view of humanity he got from Hell's Kitchen.
And his cynicism extends to his staff.
Definitely. His hiring philosophy is basically, you can't escape human depravity, take your choice, there's no other.
Ugh.
He thinks everyone's corrupt, so he picks the corruption that's useful to him.
Does anyone understand him?
His editor, Alva Scarrett, gets him partly. But the source says Ellsworth Toohey understands him completely.
Whoa, that's ominous. Suggests there may be two sides of the same cynical coin.
Could be. Different methods. Toohey's subtle manipulation, Winand's brute force populism, but maybe a shared underlying view of humanity as something to be controlled and exploited. Winand uses power derived from giving the public what it wants, however base. Toohey uses power derived from telling people what they should want, appealing to their weaknesses.
Okay, so now we have these powerful figures. Roark, Keating, Toohey, Winand. Let's talk about Dominique Frensart and how she fits into this web. She seems complicated.
Understatement of the year. Dominique is presented as incredibly perceptive, fiercely intelligent, and maybe deeply disillusioned. Her standards are impossibly high.
How do we see that early on, like when she meets Keating?
Total frankness. She tells him straight up her father wants him to be horrible to her, that she and her dad don't get along, and she nails Keating's ambition immediately. That's what you wanted. Sees right through him.
And her take on Toohey, I remember that being weirdly admiring.
It is strange. She calls him a perfect blackguard, but then says she admires him because he's sheer perfection in his own way. A monolith of calculated negativity, unlike the wishy-washy mediocrity she sees everywhere else.
So she admires his consistency, even if it's consistently awful.
Kind of. She finds consolation thinking he'll gain revenge on the world for her. It suggests this deep bitterness, this disappointment with humanity, makes her appreciate even a perfect villain over flawed heroes or hypocrites.
That's a dark place to be. And her marriage to Keating reflects this emptiness.
Absolutely. The proposal scene is stark. She shows up, he's drunk, she just asks, "Will you marry me, Peter?"
Yeah.
Boom, off to Connecticut.
No romance, no passion.
None described. The source mentions their intimacy, focusing on his feeling of defeat. Her unmoving body that had not responded is portrayed as transactional, loveless, empty.
Which makes her connection with Roark stand out even more. How is that described?
Intense, primal almost, especially at the quarry. The source uses this powerful parallel. She knew every part of this house, as he knew everything about her body. It's a physical, fundamental connection tied directly to his creative world.
And her reaction to his works isn't simple admiration.
No, it's complex. Seeing his drawings is terrifying, but also a thin point of support, like a glimpse of something real and true in a fake world. His work resonates deeply, but it also frightens her.
And later, with the dynamiting, she's involved.
Shockingly, yes. She actively helps him get past the Watchman. The source emphasizes her complete serenity. She understands why he's doing it.
She sees it as a test.
Yeah, the text says she understood it was a test, and that he involved her because she would not survive what was to follow if he hadn't. He anchored her to his act of defiance.
And her statement afterwards about being happy and free.
It's incredibly defiant. Now we stand together against all of them. You'll be a convict and I'll be an adulteress. Why I'm happy and why I'm free. Her freedom comes from rejecting society's judgment, from aligning herself completely with Roark's uncompromising stand, even as an outcast.
So their connection is based on this shared rejection of the world.
It seems so. A recognition of his integrity, his refusal to compromise, which resonates with her own deep disdain for the secondhand world, even if her expression of it is different, more destructive initially.
And what about her connection to Winan? She worked at the Banner.
For 6 years, yeah, without him even knowing who she was. She tells Toohey she had no desire to meet Winan, finding him unsuitable to your purpose. She saw his power, but was unimpressed by his cynicism, perhaps.
And Toohey uses her relationship with Keating.
Oh, absolutely. When Keating is desperate for the Cortlandt project, Toohey dangles it like a last chance, calls him an old hen in the rain to break him down further.
And then suggests Dominique.
Yeah. He previously suggested Dominique could be Keating's most effective salesman to land this Stone Ridge project, specifically setting at the meeting where she meets Winan, leading to that marriage. It's all part of Toohey's chess game, using people's desires and weaknesses against them.
Classic Toohey. Explaining Keating's desperation, using Dominique as a pawn, it just reinforces Keating's complete lack of an inner core.
Exactly. He's entirely vulnerable to manipulation because his sense of self is totally dependent on external factors.
Okay, so all these dynamics, the philosophies, the relationship, they all come crashing together at the Stoddard Temple trial, right?
That's the centerpiece battle in these excerpts, definitely. It's not just about a building. It's a proxy war over fundamental ideas. Individualism versus collectivism played out in a courtroom.
The project itself, the Temple for Hopton Stoddard, he's described as seeking religion like a bribe.
Yeah, casting doubt on the client's motives from the get-go. Roark designs it, and interestingly, Mallory, the sculptor who initially hated Roark's work, does the sculpture for it. Adds another layer of complexity.
But the main event is Toohey's testimony.
Oh, it's a performance.
Yeah.
The source says he addresses the court like a meeting, like he's rallying his followers. His argument isn't really architectural criticism.
What is it then?
It's philosophical, moral. He claims that Temple attacks history, lacks humility, imposes man's insignificance. He frames Roark's design as fundamentally anti-human, anti-tradition.
Using some pretty loaded language.
Extremely loaded. Brazen denial of our entire past, insolent no flun in the face of history, monument to a profound hatred of humanity. He paints Roark's individual ego as the enemy of all mankind.
And this works on the audience.
Hook, line, and sinker. They burst into applause, faces described as lecherously self-righteous. Two, he taps into their resentment of the exceptional, makes them feel morally superior in condemning Roark.
Are there other critics mentioned?
Yeah, representing different flavors of conformity. There's Gordon L. Prescott spouting meaningless jargon about fourth-dimensional architecture, intellectual posturing without substance.
Then the guy completing Roark didn't care what clients thought.
Right. He sneers because Roark isn't interested in being friendly and liked and popular. He compares Roark's independence to Chinese water torture, which really just reveals his own desperate need for approval.
And Mrs. Sanborn's friends.
Just gut-level rejection of the unfamiliar. Calling a Roark house preposterous, crude, like a shoe factory phony. Standard reactions from people threatened by originality.
Okay, but Dominique's view is different again, isn't it? She condemns Roark, but not for Toohey's reasons.
Exactly, it's crucial. She asks, for what kind of men did Roark build this masterpiece? Stoddard, the bride-giver, Holcomb, the traditionalist hack, Keating, the second-hander.
So her anger isn't at Toohey or the public.
No, her indignation is aimed at Roark himself, for, as she sees it, valued his pearls so little that he was willing to fling them into the muck. She thinks the creation deserved better than to be offered to such unworthy people.
So she calls the temple a sacrilege, but against the work itself, not against tradition.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's a sacrilege against the ideal, against the creation, for being wasted on mediocrity. Her condemnation actually highlights Roark's profound isolation and the perceived futility of offering genius to a world that can't or won't appreciate it.
Wow. So the trial really crystallizes the whole conflict. Toohey rallying the collective against the individual, the conformists piling on, and Dominique offering this unique, almost tragic perspective on the creator's plight.
It sets the stage perfectly for the next major turning point, Keating's total collapse and his desperate move.
Yeah, this part is rough. After the trial, Keating's career is basically toast, right?
Completely falling apart. His office feels unreal. The only place he feels grounded, ironically, is when he slipped furtively up to Roark's apartment at night, consumed by vague anxiety and anonymous guilt. He's drawn back to the man whose path he rejected.
Then Toohey dangles the Cortlandt Homes project.
Yeah, but it's designed to be impossible. The specs are contradictory. Luxury features on a shoestring budget, a millionaire's kitchen for a sharecropper's income, a model project demanding genius-level ingenuity and structural economy for low rent. Other architects failed.
And Toohey rubs Keating's nose in his own failure while offering it.
Masterfully cruel. Tells Keating you couldn't sell him to Washington even at the height of your career, calls him that old hen in the rain, kicks him when he's down, then offers this impossible lifeline that Keating knows he can't manage alone.
Which forces Keating's hand. He goes to Roark.
And just lays it all bare. A total confession. I'm finished as an architect. He admits he needs a prestige I don't deserve for an achievement I didn't accomplish to save a name I haven't earned the right to bear. It's the complete self-assessment of a second-hander.
And then the request. The unbelievable request.
I am asking you to design it, and let me put my name on it. Just asking Roark to hand over his genius so Keating can maintain his facade.
What is Roark's reaction? Is he furious? Disgusted?
Nope. The sources describe him as quiet, almost gentle, no anger. And then he says this incredibly profound thing.
The line about not being able to hurt another person.
Yeah. I don't think a man can hurt another, not in any important way, neither hurt him nor help him. I've really nothing to forgive you.
What does that mean? How can he say Keating hasn't hurt him?
From Roark's perspective, as depicted here, true harm is internal. It's compromising your own integrity. Since Keating's actions, his betrayals, his compromises never forced Roark to violate his own principles, Keating hasn't inflicted fundamental damage on Roark. The damage is all Keating's, internal to him. So nothing for Roark to forgive because the injury wasn't Roark's in the first place.
That's a very detached, almost cold perspective, but consistent with his character.
Extremely consistent. He just observes, factually, you have changed, Peter, and then he agrees.
He agrees to design it.
He does. He agrees to design the Cortlandt project for Keating.
Why? Why would he do that? It seems completely counter to his principles.
The sources don't spell it out simply. It's not depicted as charity or pity. Maybe it's partly his fundamental drive to create, to solve the architectural problem, even under compromised circumstances. Maybe it's a recognition that Keating is so hollowed out, so incapable of authentic creation or harm, that lending him the design doesn't fundamentally touch Roark's own reality. He provides the design because he can, And Keating's pretense is ultimately irrelevant to Roark's own self.
It's a difficult moment to process, but it leads directly to the climax, doesn't it? Winans building, Cortland, the dynamiting.
Exactly. Roark's agreement sets everything in motion for the final act described in these excerpts.
So Gale Winan decides to build his ultimate legacy project.
The Winan building. Right in Hell's Kitchen, reclaiming his past. It's meant to be the statement of his life, his triumph. He tells Roark, a monument to my life. After I am gone, that building will be Gale Winand.
And he picks Roark to design this deeply personal monument. Why Roark?
Winan recognizes Roark's unique integrity. He says he found the right architect, someone much more than just an architect I hired. He even admits choosing Roark for an earlier project, Stone Ridge, went against his usual cynicism. Roark gave him a better motive than just following trends. There's a grudging respect, maybe even an aspiration towards Roark's integrity, buried under Winan's cynicism.
And their connection deepens. The dinner, the call to Dominique.
Yeah, the source highlights that first dinner. Winan calling Dominique from Roark's office. It signals this intense triangle forming.
Okay, while Winan is planning his monument with Roark, Roark is secretly working on Cortland for Keating.
That's right, working nights, keeping it separate from his main office. Dominique notices he's killing himself over something, obsessing over details like ventilator shafts, pouring his genius into this compromised project.
Giving his absolute best to something that will have another man's name on it, born out of desperation and manipulation.
Exactly, the ultimate contradiction.
And then, boom, the dynamiting.
Roark destroys the Cortland Homes project right after it's finished, deliberately blows it up.
And Dominique is there helping him.
Actively involved, helps him bypass the watchman, described as having complete serenity. She understands it's a test, aligning herself fully with his radical act.
So why does the builder destroy his creation? What does this act represent?
It's portrayed as the ultimate defense of integrity. The Cortland project embodied everything Roark opposed. Designed by him but credited to Keating, commissioned via Toohey's manipulation. It was a physical monument to second-handedness.
So destroying it was protecting the principle.
That's the implication. Destroying the physical form to protect the moral right of the creator to his own work, uncompromised, unclaimed by others or the collective. It's the absolute rejection of the deal he made with Keating, maybe realizing its true cost only upon completion.
And Winan choosing Roark for his legacy, Dominique participating. It all points to the central theme of integrity versus compromise.
Absolutely. Winan yearns for the integrity Roark embodies, even as his own life is built on compromise. Dominique finds liberation by joining Roark's radical stand. The dynamiting is the flashpoint where these forces collide.
Which brings us to the final trial, the aftermath. This is where all the philosophies really clash head-on.
It's the climax of these excerpts for sure. Winan's reaction is fascinating first.
He defends Roark in the banner.
Fiercely, passionately, uses the full power of his paper. His editor, Scarrett, is horrified. We can't defend a dynamiter, but Winan shuts him down. Keep still, Alva.
What's the core of Winan's defense?
He challenges everything, argues Roark surrendered himself, questions why society wants him guilty, defends genius against the century the second-rater, and crucially, he questions self-sacrifice as a virtue.
He says the self shouldn't be sacrificed.
Exactly. Quote, "It is precisely the self that cannot and must not be sacrificed. It is the unsacrificed self that we must respect in man above all." It's pure Roark philosophy coming from the mouth of the ultimate cynic and manipulator of public opinion.
But it doesn't work. The public turns on him.
Massively. Toohey likely orchestrates much of it. The public backlash is huge. His staff revolts. He's fighting this bodiless human will. He has to stop the presses.
And the letters about Dominique add to his pain.
The source says they were the worst of the suffering for him. His public defeat is tied to his private anguish over Dominique siding with Roark. After 3 weeks, he's broken. He walks out, defeated by the very mob mentality he used to control.
A tragic figure, in a way. Tried to stand for something, finally, and got crushed.
While Dominique, interestingly, finds freedom in the chaos. She feels happy, free, tells Winan he's been blasted over to the side where he belongs, forced to confront the reality Roark represents.
She embraces the scandal.
Totally. Tells Roark she added to his troubles, but now they stand together against all of them. Her liberation is found in total opposition, aligned with Roark's defiance.
And Keating, his role in the trial.
Utterly pathetic.
Yeah.
The sources show him slumped forward, obedient. His testimony is just a flat confession.
He admits Roark designed Cortland.
Plainly. Says Roark did it at his request, because I was not capable of doing it myself. The final, public stripping away of his entire facade.
Which leaves Toohey to deliver his victory speech.
Essentially, he gives this chilling monologue to the broken Keating, laying out his entire philosophy and endgame, his vision for the world of the future.
Which is?
The average, the mediocre, enthroned, the little people, as absolute ruler. The opposite of ego isn't humility, it's bromide, dull conformity.
And the goal is submission.
Unlimited submission. People seeking only medals for service, no personal achievement allowed. Everything that can't be ruled must go. Individualists won't survive. Everyone will just smile and obey.
He even confesses his own motivation.
Chillingly. I'm the most selfless man you've ever known. I use people for the sake of what I can do to them. It's my only function and satisfaction. I want power. His ultimate goal. Let all live for all. Let all sacrifice and none profit. Let all stagnate. There's equality in stagnation. Universal slavery to the collective will.
Slavery without even a master, just slavery to slavery itself.
A truly dark vision. And his final proof of power. Keating knows too he is monstrous, knows he ruined him, but still can't leave me. Total psychological dominance over the man with no self.
Which leads, finally, to Roark's own statement at the trial, his big speech.
Right. Presented in these excerpts as the philosophical core. His defense of individualism, his attack on altruism as practiced in this world.
What are the key points?
No man can live for another. He cannot share his spirit. He defines the second-hander who lives through others, using altruism as a weapon of exploitation. The creator lives for himself. The parasite lives for others.
He argues living for others is degrading.
Calls the man who lives for others a slave, and the one who enslaves himself voluntarily in the name of love, the basis of creatures. He argues this degrades human dignity and the very concept of love. This dependency, this exploitation masked as altruism, is what he's fundamentally rejecting.
And this speech explains the dynamiting.
It's presented as the philosophical justification. He destroyed Cortland to defend the principles in this speech, the creator's right to his work, the rejection of the second hand, the refusal to sacrifice his integrity to the demands of others.
So these final scenes are the culmination. Winans' fall, Dominique's defiance, Keating's collapse, Toohey's ultimate vision, and Roark's definitive statement.
Exactly. All the threads pulled together, the core conflicts laid bare.
Okay, we've really dug into this source material. We've traced Roark's integrity, Keating's compromise, Toohey's manipulation, Winans' cynicism and failed stand, Dominique's complex journey. And architecture was the stage for it all.
Absolutely. It's the physical manifestation of these underlying battles of will and philosophy.
So why should you, listening to this, care? I mean, these are extreme characters, extreme situations.
But they force you to confront questions that are always relevant, right? What does it mean to live for yourself versus others? Where does creativity actually come from? What's the real nature of power and influence in the world around you? And maybe most importantly, how does society really treat people who refuse to conform?
Yeah. And based purely on what we've seen in these specific excerpts, it leaves you with a pretty stark question. Is holding on to uncompromising integrity just an impossible burden in a world that seems built on compromise?
Or is it, as Roark's character seems to argue here, the only way to achieve anything real, the only path to genuine freedom and a moral life?
It's definitely something to chew on.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into these particular Fountainhead excerpts. We've analyzed the text provided, trying to illuminate the core conflicts and ideas.
Hope you found this breakdown useful. We'll catch you on the next one.